welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. In today's video I'm going to be doing my mid-month wrap-up for the month of July. So far this month I have read 12 books, which I'm really happy with, and I'm happy with the total, but actually the overall quality of the books I've read hasn't been great. I don't think I've read a single 5-star this month so far, and the 4 stars have been few and far between as well. So I'm really hoping for a better half of the month and hope that I find a 5-star this month, but I'm just going to dive straight into the books. So first book that I read this month was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and I actually really enjoyed this one and gave this one 4 stars. I was hesitant going into this one because I'd heard a lot of very mixed things. A lot of people really did not enjoy this book and said that it wasn't very good in comparison to previous Emily Henry books, and it definitely leans more to women's fiction rather than romance, which I think if you know that going into it, I think you can still have a good time. But if you are looking for just a romance, then this book isn't really going to be that for you. But if you know going in that it does lean a bit more to women's fiction, I think you could have a really good time reading it. So in this one we follow Alice and Hayden, and Alice and Hayden are both journalists, and Alice has tracked down this kind of big Hollywood star. She was very big and popular in her day, but she has become a bit more reclusive as she's gotten older, and she's managed to track her down, and she wants to work on writing a memoir or autobiography with this Hollywood star. And what this I can't remember what her name is, Margaret, and what Margaret says is that she will consider writing this book, but she needs to kind of figure out which of the two is going to be the best writer to work with, either Alice or Hayden. So she says, I'll spend a month with each of you and decide after the month. I want to get to know you first before I kind of share my story. And so we get to see chapters from Alice's point of view where she's spending time with Margaret, and Margaret is slowly telling her family story. They've had some scandals along the way, and they're slowly being revealed to Alice. And whilst that is all going on, Alice and Hayden have a kind of budding relationship budding romance building between the two of them. I did really like this book. I thought it was a solid read. As I say, it does lean towards more women's fiction than romance, so we do spend a lot more time hearing Margaret's story than seeing the romance develop between Alice and Hayden. I still had a really good time with it, but I definitely would have liked to have seen more of a romance between the two, and I do feel like Margaret's story was building to something that never really happened. I feel like the kind of reveal from her story, which I won't obviously spoil, is kind of a little bit of a letdown in terms of what I felt like it was building up to compared to what it actually was. So that's why I gave it a 4-star, but I did still really have a good time reading it. I would definitely recommend checking it out. Then I'm going to talk about 2 books together, and because they kind of link. So we have Before I Knew, which is the prequel to The Forever Rule by Carrie Ann Ryan. So I did read both of these. This paperback edition of The Forever Rule also includes the prequel, which is Before I Knew. So I'll kind of talk about both of these together, but I did mark them separately on Goodreads because technically Before I Knew is a separate book. You can download it as an ebook by itself, but it is obviously included in here. If you are going to read this series, then I think you definitely do need to read Before I Knew. And overall, I gave this, the prequel and the book, 3 stars. It wasn't my favourite book by Carrie Ann Ryan, but I think it was a solid start to the series. So in this series, this is book 1 and the prequel to the Cage family. And this family is going to have, I think, definitely at least 4 books. But there could obviously be more to come, but I think there's definitely been 4 that are planned. So in this one we are following Blakely and Aston, and in the prequel we get to see them meet, and Blakely is accidentally added to the family WhatsApp group for the Cage brothers, and she's accidentally added to the group, and then Aston, as the older sibling, kind of has to speak to her separately to kind of remove her from the group and kind of make sure that she doesn't reveal anything that has been kind of discussed in the group. And they kind of strike up a conversation, they keep talking to one another, and eventually they do meet, and they go to this, I think it's some sort of like fundraiser event, and they end up dancing together at this event. And Blakely's boss sees them dancing together and immediately fires Blakely because of that, because he thinks that Blakely has been sharing like company secrets with the enemy. So she gets fired. And at the end of the prequel, Aston's father passes away, and some family secrets get revealed, and he kind of shuts off from the world and kind of doesn't end up speaking to Blakely. So that's kind of where the prequel ends. And then the book one, The Forever Rule, kind of picks up straight where the prequel left off, but it's like three or four months later. Blakely has been out of work for that whole time, and she ends up getting a interview at the Cage Enterprises, which is the Cage family business. It isn't Aston that interviews her, it's actually his brother James. The company is kind of divided up into different sections, so to speak. So although Aston obviously works for the company and is like a part owner, he isn't like he's not like directly managing Blakely. And in this, and I think I will spoil it because I think it is mentioned in the blurb, but basically you find out what's happened with Aston's family, and it turns out that Aston's father actually had like a secret second family that none of them knew about. And as kind of one of the stipulations in the will, the family have to have a monthly meal together with at least 5 of the family members have to be in attendance in order for them to inherit. Otherwise the company will be split up, and the money split up and sold, and the money given to charity. So there's kind of a lot going on kind of inside plot wise, and we do spend a lot of time getting introduced to other members of the Cage family, which I assume probably at some point are going to have their own books, and I personally felt that detracted from our time with the main romance. So as a romance, I didn't really enjoy this one because we didn't spend enough time with Blakely and Aston, just the two of them, in my opinion. We had a lot of side things going on, and as I said, the introduction to the other family members, which I think did take time away from the couple. But overall, I think this was a solid start to the series, and I'm definitely intrigued to continue on with the series. And I have discovered that books 1 and 2 are on Audible Plus. So if you have the Audible subscription, and there's a catalogue called Audible Plus, which has a selection of titles that you can listen to without using any of your credit. And quite a few of Carrie Ann Ryan's books are in there, and this series, the first 2 books, because that's all that's out currently, are in there. So I will definitely be listening to the second book at some point. Next, I read Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh, and this is book 1 in the Boys of Tommen series, and I really enjoyed this one. I had a really good time reading this, and I gave this one 4 stars. So this one is long. I listened to this on audio, and this first book is actually split up into 2 kind of audiobooks. There's audiobook part 1 and part 2. I think in total it works out to like 25 hours, or just over. So it is really long, but I feel like even though it is long, it did fly by really quickly, and I was really engaged with the story. So in this one we are following Shannon and Johnny, and Shannon has been quite badly bullied in her old school, and so she ends up moving to this I think it's a private college, Tommen College, which is definitely more of an elite school. If it's not private, it's definitely an elite school. And there she meets Johnny, and right from the off-go, they are kind of intrigued by one another, and it follows their journey and their relationship. Very, very much a slow burn romance. There's a lot of trauma on for both characters. Johnny has things going on in his life, as does Shannon. Shannon has a very, very, very abusive household, which she is kind of dealing with, and Johnny is suffering from a sports injury that's not quite fully recovered. So there's a lot of things going on, but I did find this to be a really engaging story. I really can't wait to read the second book. I have the audiobook on hold from my library, so I will be getting to that as soon as my hold comes in, but I desperately want to get hold of copies of these books because I do think that I am going to enjoy this series, and I do think that this series is worth the hype. I keep seeing it a ton on BookTok and YouTube, and I'm so glad that I decided to pick it up. Then I read Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. This is book 1 in the Kindred's Curse series, and I gave this one 4 stars. So I did really enjoy this one as well. This is a new book in a new fantasy romance series. This originally, I believe, was indie published, but has since been traditionally published, and the series is currently ongoing. So in this one we follow DM, I think is how you pronounce it, and she has spent her whole life being a healer. Her mother is a healer, and she lives in this kind of small village and doesn't really know much else about life. There are these people in the realm who kind of are almost like demigods, called the Descended, who are more superior to humans, and she kind of knows that she has to stay away from them. Her mother is very strict on her not getting into any contact with the Descended, but at the beginning of this book her mother kind of mysteriously disappears, and throughout this book we are following DM as she kind of tries to figure out what's happening in this world whilst also trying to find her mother and figure out what's happened to her mother. I won't go into too much else because I don't want to spoil it, but I feel like this was a really good book. There is a slight romance in here, but it is very, very slow burn, and I think that will progress more in later books. I had a really good time reading this. It does follow a lot of the kind of typical fantasy tropes, so if you've read a ton of fantasy books, you will kind of see some of the tropes in terms of a girl who doesn't quite know about fully what's going on in her world, doesn't know about her true identity, things like that. That does feature in here, but I thought that this was really well written, had a really good time reading it, and I have got book 2 on hold from the library and I cannot wait for it to come in. Then I have Next to You by Hannah Bonham Young, which is book 2 in the next series, and I gave this one 3 stars. This is definitely not my favourite from this author, but I thought it was okay. So in this one we are following Lane and Matt, and this is a friends to lovers romance. They start off as friends at the beginning of the book. Lane is kind of struggling because she's got she doesn't really know where her life is going. All of her friends seem to be in couples. She doesn't really have, like, she has a job, but it's not really like a career. And so she decides one night when she's feeling kind of lonely and down, she randomly decides to buy a old school bus, and she decides that she's going to renovate this school bus so that she can live on the bus. And she kind of ropes in her friend Matt to help her with the renovations, and kind of their romance builds from there. I thought this one was okay, but definitely not my favourite from this author. Although the friends to lovers trope is one of my favourites, I didn't really love it in this one. I feel like the friendship element was, I don't know, like it felt a little bit weak to me. There was something about it that didn't quite hit the mark, unfortunately, so that's why I gave it 3 stars. Then I read The Thrashers by Julie Soto. I really didn't enjoy this book and gave this one 2 stars, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. This one will be featuring in a upcoming reading vlog as well. This is a young adult mystery thriller. And at the beginning of the book there is a trigger, well, there's not a trigger warning at the beginning of the book, but I'm giving you a trigger warning for suicide. This book deals with that, that one of the characters right at the beginning of the book commits suicide, and that is like the opening chapter, and it is relatively graphic. I wouldn't say it's the most graphic scene that I've ever read, but it is definitely a bit more graphic than I was expecting. I didn't really realise that it was going to start like that. And basically we are following a group of teens who are left behind, and they are kind of accused of causing this girl to commit suicide because they were bullying her, and we are kind of following their journey as they kind of deal with the aftermath of her passing away and whether they were involved or not. And there is kind of some kind of loose supernatural elements that I really didn't enjoy. I feel like if you've read any YA mysteries, this falls into a lot of tropes that they have, but not in a good way. I didn't have a good time reading this. Although I did finish it, I finished it more because I was reading it for a vlog and because I kept thinking maybe it's going to get better. But yeah, I didn't love this one. I wouldn't recommend picking this one up at all. Then I read For Whom the Bell Tolls by J.C. Lin, and this is book 1 in the Hell's Bells series, and I really enjoyed this one and gave this a 3.5 stars. So in this one we are following Lily, who passes away very early on at the beginning of the book. She discovers that she's got cancer and she is not going to survive, and she ends up passing away. This all happens like within the first couple of chapters, and then she ends up in the afterlife. And this is this author's kind of take on the afterlife and how that is kind of handled. And in this world you can either be judged based on your religious beliefs, or there is a universal judgment system where you either get judged as being like good or bad, and you end up either in like paradise or heaven, depending on your kind of religious views, the like equivalent of that. Or if you are deemed to be bad, then you end up in hell, and in hell there are different levels. So you can be at like the bottom level, which is where like that's where the really bad people go, or you can end up kind of like in the middle or kind of at the lower end, and you can work your way up. So hell is designed to be a punishment, but once you've kind of worked through your punishment, you can move up levels if that is something that the souls choose to do. And we just kind of follow her life in the afterlife. She ends up taking this child under her wing who ends up in the afterlife because the child ends up dying. And she ends up in the afterlife, and she is adamant that she belongs in hell because of things that she has been told while she was alive by some abusive parents. She believes that she should be in hell, and Lily kind of takes her under her wing and kind of shows her that hell is not where she belongs, and so she ends up kind of almost like adopting her. And she does have a romance with a demon called Belle, and this one was, I feel like it kind of fell into the kind of almost like cozy element. It felt very like low stakes. There is kind of a moment where the demons are fighting a war with another universe, but it is very much like a side plot that doesn't really go anywhere. I would have liked to have seen more kind of stakes in this. I felt that it was too cozy, but I didn't really realize that it was going to be cozy. Looking at the cover, I was expecting like a lot more action, and which I didn't get. So that's why I gave it 3.5 stars. It was good. It was a solid start to the series. When I was reading it, I wasn't sure if this was going to be like a series or a standalone, but it does look as if there are going to be more books in this world, which I am definitely going to be interested in checking out when that is available. I don't know when that's going to be, but I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out. Then we have Gatsby by Jane Crowther, and I gave this one 4 stars. I think if you are a Great Gatsby fan, you will like this. If you have never read The Great Gatsby, I don't know whether you would like it as much and get as many of the references, but this is basically a gender-switched retelling of The Great Gatsby, but retold in kind of modern day. And so we obviously follow the main story of what happens in The Great Gatsby, but in this one the Gatsby character is a influencer, and the Nick Carraway character is a journalist who kind of obviously becomes involved in Gatsby's world, going to her parties, and obviously, as I say, it follows the exact same story as The Great Gatsby, just in modern day. I love The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby is one of my favourite books. I've read it, reread it multiple times. I reread it every year, and I absolutely love it. And I think that this did a really good job of retelling, with also having kind of like its unique modern spin on it. I've not really read any other retellings, so I'd definitely be interested to check out more retellings, maybe ones that don't necessarily follow the story so exact. But this one I think did a really good job, and I'm definitely interested to see what this author does next. I don't know what else she has planned, but I thought that this was a good read. Then I reread Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So the first time I read Wuthering Heights, I didn't really enjoy it and actually gave it 2 stars. I enjoyed it more a second time round upon reread. So I gave it 3 stars upon reread, and I listened to this on audio. So the reason I decided to reread this is because I actually went to see a theatre production of Wuthering Heights earlier this month, and I really wanted to have reread the book before I went to see the production, but that didn't quite happen. I was kind of like not quite halfway through listening to it when I actually ended up going to see the production. But I think seeing the production really helped my kind of enjoyment of this book, because I feel like I had a better grasp of what was happening. The problem I think with Wuthering Heights is so many of the characters have very similar names, and sometimes, I can't remember if I listened to the audiobook the first time around or if I physically read it, but I think the first time I read it I got really confused with who's who and what the connections were, because there is a lot of, as I say, characters with similar names, and they are all kind of related in some way. I won't go into too much detail about the story because I think it's a classic, you probably know what it's about, but I did enjoy it on reread, and I feel like if I maybe reread this again, like in a couple of years' time, I feel like maybe I could get more out of it again, because now I am really familiar with what the story is about and I know the characters a bit more. I think I could enjoy it more. I know people say you either love Jane Eyre or Wuthering Heights, you either like one or the other, and I definitely prefer Jane Eyre to Wuthering Heights, but I think I could, if I gave this another chance maybe in a couple of years' time, I think I could maybe enjoy it even more. But I gave it 3 stars on reread. Then I read One Charmed Christmas by Sheila Roberts. I am currently doing a reading vlog, or I'm working on a video for Christmas in July, so I'm reading some Christmas books, and this was one of the ones, I'm trying to read ones that I've had on my TBR, and this is one that I picked up purely because of the cover. Look at that, it's absolutely gorgeous. But this one follows a bunch of characters who end up going on a river cruise around Europe, and they all have kind of things going on in their lives, and it's just a story about these people coming together. We have a doctor who's a widow, a woman who's kind of discovered that she's got cancer and that she's going to be doing that kind of journey after Christmas. We see a group of sisters. One sister is having marriage troubles, the other one's kind of starting up a relationship with one of the passengers that she meets on the river cruise. There's a lot of different stories going on. This is definitely more of a women's fiction story, but I had a good time listening to it. I did actually listen to this one on audio, and I gave it 3 stars. I think it was a fun Christmas read. I feel like it's fairly predictable and also forgettable, but I had a good time whilst I was reading it, and I guess that's the main thing. I could definitely see this as a like Hallmark Christmas movie if it's not already, but I could definitely see it as that. It definitely gave those vibes, and I'd be interested to check out more from Sheila Roberts. I think if you like Jill Shalvis, Susan Mallory, authors like that, I think you would like this one. As I say, it definitely does lean more to women's fiction than romance. If you don't want any, there is kind of a light romance in here, but the romance is not the main story, which is why I'd say it's more women's fiction than obviously a romance, but it's not spicy in the slightest. So if you're looking for something like that and a Christmas read, this one would be a good one to pick up. And then lastly, I read Beneath the Stars by Emily McIntyre. This is book 1 in the Sugar Lake series, and this series originally was her first series before the Never After series, and this one obviously started out independently published and then was traditionally published and recovered. I liked this one. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's definitely not my favourite book from this author, but I did like it, and I can definitely see improvements from her writing from this to her Never After series. This one is a childhood friends to lovers, like second chance romance following Alina and Chase, and they meet when the two are very young. I think Alina is 13 and Chase is about 16 or so. He's a few years older than Alina, and they have a lot going on in their pasts and their presents, and we kind of see a lot of their past before we get to the present day. Like the first half of the book is their past, like them kind of becoming friends, spending time to each other, up to kind of them getting together and having a bit of a romance, and then we flip back to present day. And I personally would have loved to have seen more of them in the present day. We spent a lot of time in the past, and I personally would have like to have seen more of their present, but overall it was a good book, and I definitely will be continuing on with the series. The series is still available on Kindle Unlimited, so I will definitely be checking out this rest of the books in this series. This series is 4 books long, and I do think that this is a solid start to the series, but definitely not my favourite from her. So those are the 12 books that I read at the start of this month. As you can see, there's a lot of 3 stars on here, not so many 4 stars. I think I had more 4 stars at the very start of the month, so I would really like to see some more 4 or maybe even a 5-star read for the second half of the month. But let me know what your favourite book has been from the first half of July. I think mine is probably Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I did really enjoy that one. And I'm interested to see what I read in the second half of the month.